Hello, Mr. Fancy Pants. I got news for you, pal. You ain't leading but two things right now. Jack and shit. Jack left town.
Maybe I am insane. And maybe it's time for you to find out how insane I am. Yeah.
I can kill everyone in this game? Sorry.
By the power of Grayskull.
Etrigan, you stop right there!
Are you ready?
Yo, we are live right here tonight. It's me, it's Louis P with the one and only Quinderella. We're hanging out here tonight. Monday night, you know what that means. And are you ready to go to Atlantis? I'm ready to go to Atlantis. I want to find out. I
told you I'm more ready than Aquaman. Let's find this out.
I know. I'm wearing my Aquaman t-shirt. We got this amazing individual. I mean, he's U.S. Army. I believe. I don't know. I'm super excited about this. He's got a lot to tell us tonight. We got people coming in already. Aviva is here. Hello, Aviva. How are you? Well, comments, guys, calm down. There you go. Aviva's here. Anyway, David Edwards is here. He's wrote a book. Once again, Amazon is bringing us these killer authors. So let's bring in Dave. That way we aren't wasting any time. And one and only, hey, Matt, how are you? I feel like romper room, romper, stomper, domper, do. Everyone's coming in to say hello to you. Anyway, let's bring in Dave, and he could talk about Atlantis. Now, Dave, I know I screwed up your military background. I am so sorry on that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into Atlantis solved.
Well, sure, yeah. Mostly, I'm an old guy, right? So I've done all kinds of things, and I get bored, so I change stuff a lot. So yeah, so I was what they call counterintelligence agent in the U.S. Army in the 80s and 90s, which I'll give you a hint of just how long ago that was. By the way, that was in a prior decade, and the math is almost undoable. So it was quite a while ago. But yeah, so I've written about 42 books, about half of them. History books, and then half just fiction books. I've got a doctorate in engineering. I've got 3 master's degrees. I'm actually secretly enrolled in an online ancient history program because I want to build some credentials around my next book, which will talk even more about Atlantis. But yeah, so I've got letters by my name, if that's important.
Okay, why Atlantis? Why? I mean, and what brought you to where you solved the mystery?
Yeah, well, it's Louis. It's largely your fault because there's only so much angry geek. There's only so much angry geek content out there, and as an old guy, you can't sleep, right? So I discovered YouTube a couple years ago. I know, and I had watched all the Angry Geek podcasts like 6 and 7 times, the reruns. I went back years, so I was out of stuff to watch. So I was just flipping around, and I found a video by this guy named Jimmy Corsetti on a channel called Bright Insight. And I came very late to the game. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, Matt Shaw says I've been a subscriber to Bright Insight for a very long time.
Well, hello, Matt. Yeah, so he knows. So Jimmy.
Cool,
there's a little bit longer history, but Jimmy was the one that kind of broke the story. And we can go over this. The place we're going to talk about is called the Rishat structure of the Eye of Sahara. We'll get into all of that. But Jimmy kind of made it popular. He's got a degree in marketing, and he's an Army guy too. And he was over there wandering around, and I don't know if he couldn't sleep one night, whatever it was, he saw a picture of this thing, and he's like, hey, this looks a lot like Atlantis. And it kind of blew up. And then he did a lot of work, and he's put out a lot of videos. And this was in 2018. But anyway, so I watched them all, and I was like, I think this guy is onto something. Now, he doesn't get everything right. It's hard to get everything right. And he was kind of coming at this as a well-intending novice, if that's not an insult, it's just a word. So when I would listen to his stuff, about 80% of it was like super compelling, but I felt there was some missing. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to jump in and see if I can figure the rest of it out, which led to this book that I've called Atlantis Solved. And I think that he found it. I think this is it. I think this Rishat structure thing fits the bill, and we'll go into all of it. The cool thing about it is that it doesn't require any leaps in what we know about history. We don't have to make anything up. We don't have to assume that Plato was an idiot or he got stuff wrong because the story comes from Plato. We can go into all of that. We don't have to do anything. And it all fits like 99.3%, which is I kind of go through that in the book. So yeah, I mean, I think we found it, and I think it's wildly interesting, and I wanted to help get the word out on it, which is why I wrote the book and why I'm doing I mean, it was like a 6-month waiting period to get on this show, but I finally got on it, and now we can finally talk about it.
All right, my question before M asks you hers is, and you said it looks like it. How do we know what it looks like? That's my biggest thing.
That's a great question. Well, let's get into it first off. What is the most distinctive?
I got Father. Thank you.
The most distinctive thing that everyone kind of knows about Atlantis. I mean, if I say Atlantis, what does it look like? What do you think, Louis? What's like the first thing you would try and tell me?
Aquaman. That's what I would think. I mean,
yeah.
Seriously.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
oh my God! Oh, you be quiet. That's what I think.
Okay.
I mean,
that's impressive.
Growing.
Don't get me wrong. That's very impressive.
It is very impressive.
Well, thank you. Growing up, that's what I always. Patrick Duffy, man from Atlantis, but it was always Aquaman or Namor. That's what I had.
Okay.
And
so here's the quick elevator pitch. Okay. Everything we know about Atlantis for sure came from this guy named Plato, who you've probably heard of. We all probably didn't read The Republic when we were in high school. Am I still on?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, I've gone full screen on my thing, so I can't see it.
A lot of pressure now.
Yeah, no, this the format's just a wonderful one. I'm such an amateur. But anyway, so Plato, who lived in the 5th and 4th century ancient Greece, he's kind of the beginning of a lot of the way we in the West think today. And he wrote what they call dialogues. And he wrote a lot of dialogues. And what he was really trying to do, well, he was trying to do a couple things, but he had been the apprentice of Socrates, who is kind of the most famous first philosopher. And he wrote a lot of what Socrates said, but then he also wrote a lot about cataclysms and maybe if everything gets wiped out, what's the best way to kind of rebuild the government, that kind of, the structure of society. So in that, he has 2 dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, where he talks specifically about this thing called Atlantis. And in Critias specifically, he gives us all kinds of dimensions, which we can go through. And I go through in the book in great detail. But one of the main kind of visual things he says it was a city in the middle of water, and it had a center island, and then it had 2 alternating circles of water and land, kind of going out for it in concentric circles. So that's the first thing you look for. So if we're going to find Atlantis, we're going to want to find something that looks like that. Now, all kinds of things have been found that kind of look like that. But they don't fit all the other things that Plato said. Well, if you go to Google and you just type in Rishat, R-I-C-H-A-T, Rishat structure, and then go to the images, anyone doing this, you'll see hundreds of images of this thing, and it fits that first description. So with that, then you can look at all the other things he said. He said a lot, and you can start to line them up. And I'm more than happy to go through them if you want.
Well, Matt Shaw comes back, and he says that it also looks like the Eye of Horus.
Okay. Hello, Matt. Matt and I have not met. So that is, I'm not gonna address stuff like that because what I'm trying to do is stay very close to specifically what Plato wrote. What Matt is talking about. So you have kind of this core. We're going to call it primary. Okay. So we have a primary source, which is Plato, and then we have all kinds of stuff that has been built on top of that. What Matt's talking about is something that is visually true, which is if you look at this thing, it's kind of north to south and it's at a little bit of a diag, but it looks a lot like the Eye of Horus that you see in a lot of Egyptian pillars and hieroglyphs and stuff. It absolutely does, but Plato doesn't mention it. So what I try and do in the book is I try not to speculate at all. In fact, what the book does is it takes those 2 dialogues I mentioned to Plato's, It gives you everywhere he talks about Atlantis, because most people haven't read this stuff. It's 2,500 years old or whatever. And then I kind of break those down using kind of a modern methodology into what we'll call requirements. And there's about 20 things that any place that's going to be Atlantis is going to have to match, and we have to hit all of them. And then that's kind of what we line up to say whether this wrist shot thing looks right or not.
Okay. Matt also says, travel to it with Google Earth. It's amazing. And then Chris Heber says, what was that? I think Chris was he talking about this?
Well, not all of us are going to.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory what that is.
We're all going to be seeing that image for a very long time.
Well, it is on our Facebook page.
It'll
what
be
is
in
your
our
question?
dreams tonight.
Yeah, it's on the inside of my eyelids for sure.
And what's your question?
Well, I mean, that's just also that's so interesting. But I always ask questions like this to everyone, whenever I get a guest, something like this. Wow, 42 books. First off, that's awesome. Second, you mentioned the degrees and everything, your Army background. But what about when you were in high school? Is this something you definitely saw yourself doing? Was this something you were already interested in for a long time? Your whole life kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably be an angry geek. I think I fit the
Angry Geek approved.
Angry geek.
Yeah,
approved.
there you go.
Yeah. And sure, as a kid, I came up just like everyone. I mean, I grew up watching TV in the 70s and the 80s. It's a little bit different than TV now. But about once a month or so, there'd be one of these specials on some channel where some guy puts a scuba tank on and gets a vacation out of it and goes around the Mediterranean or something. And the stories always kind of went the same. First half, and I read a lot of books too when I was a kid, like dime store books and stuff on this. But the first half always kind of sets it up like they're going to tell you what it is, and then in the second half they always kind of say, "Yeah, but we got to change this, and maybe he got this wrong, and we're going to ignore that. And if we bend all this stuff around, then maybe, but we don't know." So I always felt like it was an unanswered question. As an adult, I drifted away from it for sure. But I've read, and just in my life, I've read all this literature, all this ancient Greek literature. I've read Plato. I've read everything he wrote probably 5 or 6 times. I've read Herodotus, who we'll talk about. I've read the big Greek historians. I don't know why. I'm a geek, right? So that's what geeks read.
We love that.
Yeah. So I was I came into, when I watched Jimmy's videos, I came into this with a lot of prep. So I didn't have to take a leap. I just took where he was and I kept going, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Cool.
Matt comes back with another question. He says, Dave, I'm a huge Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson nerd, so I fell into Jimmy's channel head first. Atlantis is one of my favorite subjects. And Andre comes in and says, geek out everyone.
All right, well, let's talk about that. This is good. So, Matt, I couldn't have set this up any better. Matt, I'm on Reddit, Matt, in those forums, and we can hook up there. But he mentions Randall Carlson. So let's get all this out. And I addressed this stuff in the book. So what Randall Carlson, I won't go into his whole biography. If you ever get him on the show, please, you should. He's very charismatic, and he's done a lot of really good work kind of laying out the case why this time period had a lot more going on than maybe we hear about it in traditional history. So I think he's done that very well. Okay. Randall does not think that this Rishat thing is the lost city of Atlantis. He thinks it's in the Azores. And if, in politics in America, we have the left and the right and all that stuff, right? In Atlantis, you have Randall Carlson's camp and you have Jimmy's camp. And they are absolutely as embedded, and they argue. And now with Atlantis, it's a fun argument compared to politics. But Randall represents a different view, which we can also get into and talk about, because I think I think his criticisms, there's 5 of them, I address those in the book too, and I think they can all be handled.
Okay. So is there a plan to actually go to where you guys think it is?
Sure. So there's another gentleman that I work with. I don't work with him would be too strong, who I talk to and am friendly with, called David Stig Hansen. And he kind of is in the same circles I'm in with Atlantis. He has his channel is called Is This Atlantis? And what he does is he goes to places and he uses Google Earth and he finds all kinds of crazy things on the planet that look like really ancient civilizations might have done them. David went there about a year ago, and I went over all the photos with him. he actually has his travel log, and I'm coordinating with him. He's going back in October. He's a little braver than I am. This place is in a place called Mauritania, which is kind of the West African Sahara Desert.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, and not only is there nothing there, but everything there will either take your drone and not give it back or kill you. So it's just it's an adventure to travel. But he is my man in the field when it comes to visiting this place. And secretly, we do have, and he got a hold of a photo that he's going to verify. We have a location where we think we found larger stone buildings, which is something that people want to see. It doesn't really have to be there for this to be Atlantis, but they want to see that megalithic construction, like the pyramids or the walls in Peru, something big they can look at. And we think we found it, and we're going to document it in October when he goes back. And if we're right, then the very last piece of this, which is show me something that blows me away, will be handled.
Okay, what is expected to be found? Are you expecting treasure? Are you just expecting to find buildings? What are you guys? What are you expecting?
So when you're trying to, okay, I want to get to that question. Let's back up some. So there's a problem with Atlantis, right? And the problem with Atlantis is it's been beaten to death, and it can be anything. And you can search for Atlantis, or you can buy a book, or you can watch a video on YouTube, and it can be everything from the moon to China, to the friends you met on your life journey, to Earth, to the solar system. It can be anything. So actually, I opened the book with this, which is, if it can be anything, can we ever accept it just as something, right? So in the book, what I do is we use satellite archaeology, and it's all documented, and we take everything Plato said and we lay it out. But everyone wants to see something. So what would you see? Let's talk about the time period. We're in what they call the pre-pottery megalithic. That's the time period we're talking about. So Plato tells us that this is like 9600 BC. Pre-pottery megalithic. We also know that about 10,000 BC-ish is kind of when people started to develop agriculture. Okay, and Plato tells us that the Atlanteans were quite good at agriculture. So what we would expect to see in this area is remnants and what megalithic means? Don't want me to go over that? Neolithic. Sorry,
of course I know. I just have no idea.
You want to keep it a secret, yeah.
So fair.
Neolithic. It's just so stupid. All this is so stupid. Neolithic just means new rocks, right? So it's basically the new Stone Age. And they differentiate it from the prior Stone Age, which was during which was during the Ice Age, and there was a big event where all of a sudden it warmed up. So you had the Ice Age, and then you have the Neolithic or the New Stone Age, and that's where we start to see, and this is accepted. No one argues this, but we start to see people doing things that we can start to recognize as maybe something we would do. If we were camping and we got stuck and we're in the woods and no one would come get us, and it was 7 years later, what might we put together look like? What starts to look like what people start to put together. So some agriculture, they start to live in communities, not everywhere, but in a lot of places. They start to use stone tools, right? That's what this is, yep. Neolithic stone tools. So, and we find all that on this site. And then what we would hope to find also, that says, what Plato tells us is they dug a whole bunch of canals and stuff. And so we're going to go look for, signs of that, although we think we found some of it. But what we find at the site is exactly what we'd expect to find if people were living at it in 9600 BC.
All right. Now, Matt is coming back with another question. And I'm not going to...
So what Matt's talking about, he's talking about Göbekli Tepe. So this is
okay. Good enough, because I was going to have Em read that.
Yeah, no. Göbekli Tepe. So
it's fine. If he wants to do it, he could do it.
All right.
I appreciate that. So this is if you're in a bar at 2 a.m. and you're drunk and you're having this argument with someone who doesn't agree with you,
he could definitely do it.
Yeah, well, no, but eventually Göbekli Tepe comes into the conversation, and Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey. And it has it provides some very interesting data for people that think the Rishat structure was Atlantis. Yeah, no, what aliens? It's not nuclear submarines. I probably should turn the chat off, and I'll let you read it to me when you want to address it.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Big Lake Tippy is a big site. They've only unearthed, like, I don't even know if it was 6% or 10% or some small piece of it. It's in Turkey, and it shows a lot of community and a lot of building and stuff going on. The themes or the theories have evolved a little bit, but people were doing stuff. And it dates exactly to 9600 BCE, which is when Plato tells us that there was a big cataclysm and it wiped out Atlantis. So we can go look at something that existed at the same time period, and it's at a level of technology that absolutely fulfills everything we'd ever want and everything that was described by Plato about Atlantis and this Rishat structure thing. So it's a wonderful find.
Okay. All right. I was just thrown off because Matt, who is a personal friend of mine, put that word up there, and I was like, I'm not reading that. I'm gonna have Emily do it.
Matt knows.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, that's what I was gonna do.
Yeah,
I was
smart
like,
guy.
no. Yes, I try. Chris Graves, fantastic artist, comes in and says, pretty sure they solved the mystery of Atlantis on Ancient Aliens.
Ancient Aliens, that's good stuff.
I love it. I've watched every Ancient Alien ever. On this one, they might have missed it, but the rest of their stuff is solid. Yeah.
All right. So, go ahead, Em.
No. Oh.
I thought you were gonna say something.
No. It's just I can't ask a question though, because I did have a few. It was interesting because, like, believe it or not, there's like so many tests you can take, like quiz your knowledge of Atlantis. Like, have you taken those before? That's not my question, but like,
no. So I mean, look, I'm an academic. I mean, I really do. I have a doctorate in engineering. I was president of a university.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of master's degrees. I've written a ton of books. What you typically do if you're writing kind of for real in a real academic field, and Atlantis is not a real academic field, but the first thing you do is you do what they call review of the literature. And I started using that approach. But like the Atlantis test, I mean, look, Atlantis, it's not power crystals, it's not nuclear submarines. It's not UFOs or aliens. I mean, matter of fact, it's almost disappointing. I describe it as almost like Christmas, right?
A little bit.
You look at your Christmas presents for a month and you wonder what's in them, and you make up all kinds of scenarios and you're excited. Yeah, I know. We know what Lewis got. And then when you open it, no matter how good it is what it is what it is. Now it's something. It's not everything. It's not every possibility. It's something. So, and that's kind of how this is. This is a bunch of people living in Western Africa during a time when it was green and raining and nice, and they found this really cool set of islands that were very well protected, and they started agriculture and they formed a society around it, and that's kind of what it is.
Okay.
Now, do you think that if you guys are correct and you solved this mystery?
I am correct, yeah.
Okay, all right. No, I'm sorry. No disrespect.
Virtual
Okay.
high five right there.
Okay.
Yeah, me or him?
You.
Okay, all right, I'll take it.
Okay. So you guys in October, you go there. You're there.
David will go there. The other David will go there, yeah.
Okay. You win the lottery, you go with him. Do you think you would actually find or discover the reason why Atlantis sunk?
Okay.
Is that the next mystery? Is that the next?
Well,
I had that question too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I'm glad it's not a stupid question.
No, it's not. It's all covered in the book, and I can start to go through some of the detail.
Yeah, please.
What Plato tells us. So some of this could be coincidence, right? But by the time we get to all of it, that there does become a point where it's no longer coincidence. It just is, right? So Plato tells. So here's how Plato knows about Atlantis. He was talking to a guy named Critias, whose great grandfather was named Solon. And Solon was one of the first early ancient Greek politicians, kind of as they're coming into their classical age. It's not quite their classical age, but and we're talking like 600 BC. So it's after the Bronze Age, after what they call the Greek Dark Ages, and they're starting to reemerge. So Solon, in trying to figure out how to be a politician, he goes to Egypt. because that's the place to learn this kind of thing. You know, everyone knows Egypt. It's a very old and respected society. They know all kinds of stuff. So he goes and he talks to the priests. And the priests go over, you know, all their hieroglyphics and all their histories. And one of the things they do is they explain to him their ancient history. Okay. And in their ancient history, they talk about this thing called Atlantis, and they have the dimensions of it, which we can get into, and all kinds of information on it. And they say that it was destroyed, or that it fell into the sea, covered by water, falls into the sea, and that after this great cataclysm that sunk it, basically, there was a shoal of mud. You couldn't get there anymore, and it was completely blasted away and destroyed. So we know Atlantis was what we would probably call today probably something like a tsunami.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it is.
I swear. Tsunami.
What did I do?
Nothing. I was just telling you.
Like, I doubted you.
So the time period we're talking about is just 9600 BC. It's the end of what they call the Younger Dryas event. So you have the Younger Dryas, the Older Dryas, and the Oldest Dryas. Really stupid names. And the Dryas, as far as I can figure out, is some kind of plant. And the historians and scientists are able to measure what the plant is doing. And then from those measurements, they can derive what the temperature was on the planet. So the Younger Dryas event is like 11,000 BC to 9600 BC, something like that. It might be a little older. It's not very long, but it's an ice age, like a mini ice age. And then all of a sudden, at 9600 BC, we come out of it, and the Earth warms by like 35 degrees Fahrenheit, a big number in a year or two. So the fact that Plato gives us that date is when things on Earth were kind of having problems, and the fact that we know scientifically that is a time when weird stuff would be going on lines up. And if you look at the west coast of Africa, there's a picture on the cover of the book. I know I didn't send you pictures, but you can see a tsunami come in, and if you look at it, and then you can see it flow away over time, and it pulls all the sand down that slope from where this Rishat structure is. And this thing's like 345 miles inland, which is a reason which fits Plato's description, which we can get into in a second. But you can actually see the effects of whatever this was, a tsunami. Some people think maybe a comet hit the planet. Some think just during the warming, because the Atlantic ridge is very thin. So maybe there's a lot of earthquakes that would have caused a tsunami. It could be anything. I don't have to prove which one of those things it was, because now I'm arguing ancient comet theory, and I don't really know. Yeah. I'm not an astronomist, but something clearly happened, and that's not, and no one disagrees, by the way. None of this is disputed. It's a well-known, well-documented, well-accepted fact that time period, bad shit was going on.
Okay. Matt comes in. Matt says lots of theories. Comet strike on the North American icy, etc. Nick says, hey guys, loving the topic. You said Atlantis is battered. Would it be hard to carbon date if you found an agricultural tool? That's what I said. Or or would water erosion hurt dating the item? Also, thank you for your service, Dave.
Okay, sure. Thanks. Yeah, no, my service was a long time ago, so I appreciate it.
No, but still, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you very much.
So look, they found tons. Remember, we're talking about pre-pottery Neolithic. Okay, so pottery is awesome because you got to bake it and you can carbon date it. Pre-pottery means Neolithic means stones. So we're talking about rocks, and rocks are a lot harder to date. So what they do is when they find tools is they take samples of anything organic that's maybe right below it, under the theory that, if it went on top of it and then the thing underneath it might give you a better idea for the date. And they found tons of stuff. They found rock pottery. They found rock spearheads. They found all the things you would expect to find in this area of a pre-pottery Neolithic society. And they all date to this time period and later. So there were absolutely people there. It's not disputed science.
All right. We're going to take 30 seconds for sponsors. And then we'll be right back with more from Dave and Atlantis Solved. H Squared Collectibles. 39 Wedgwood Drive, Suite 232. Inside the Slater Mill Mall. Pokemon every Saturday mornings. Become a Pokemon Blaster. Magic the Gathering every Friday night. Comics, toys, vinyls. Diecast and more. Find your inner hero at CH Square Collectibles. Proud sponsor of the Angrygeeks show. I said it once, I say it 1,000 times. That is so 70-ish.
That was the loudest
You little
commercial I ever heard.
dance. You always say you're gonna do it.
I know. Next week we'll have a dance-a-thon during that.
Dance
We'll
off.
Yes, definitely. Or put something into the ad. I don't know. I dig that. And Chris Hebert, our one of our sponsors, the owner of CH Square Collectibles, he loves it. He said he dances whenever he hears that music as well. Just amazing. I absolutely love it. So, Dave, where is the book available? Is it just available on Amazon, available on the Kindle, or can we get it in a bookstore?
Right now it's just available through Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
No website, no anything like that?
Oh, we can go to the publisher website, frequency99.com, and that has the book information and then a link to it and all that good stuff. And you can get a paperback. It's in paperback and ebook and all that stuff.
All right. Chris says
Yes.
he might need to do a Starsky and Hutch cosplay. All right. Em, you have any other questions for Chris before we move forward?
I don't know. Well, how should I put this? How technologically advanced would you say they were?
It's almost like we coordinated this. That's a fantastic question. Yeah, that's good. All right, so we got to first off, we got to stop using this term advanced, okay? Because the way our little human rat brains work, when we hear advanced, we think advanced.
Stop talking about me like that. I know I have a little brain. Oh,
I'm just reading the private chat. These are what people are telling me. I don't know. Yeah, so they were advanced from Plato's view in talking about their early history. So here's what we know. We know a lot about them. We know that, like as I said, people were starting to act more modern during this time. We know agriculture was already invented, and Plato tells us they were really, really good at agriculture. And he tells us this thing sits, which is now the Sahara Desert, but it was green at the time and plenty of rain. It sits on this huge plain, and it's 2,000 stadia by 3,000 stadia. Those are the dimensions. Now, what the heck's a stadia, right? Well, so we'll get to that. But they had it divided up. I know, and they had like 10,000 landowners, and each of them had to provide a son to the army and all this stuff. So they were very, very good at agriculture. And the other thing that Plato thought they were pretty good at was organizing themselves socially to get stuff done. Now they were in a very defensible position. They had abundant resources and all kinds of stuff. So they were able to do this. They're probably one of the first ones to do it. What they were not very advanced in is warfare. For example, now we know we're talking Stone Age, so we're talking spears and a rock on the end of a stick. But what Plato tells us, he tells us that at some point the Atlanteans got arrogant, and close. And what they decided to do was they decided to expand their empire. And we've got the city, we've got the continent of Atlantis, we've got the empire of Atlantis. We can talk about all of that, or the kingdom of Atlantis. But they invaded Libya, which is on the same landmass as them. They invaded parts of Europe. And they invaded Egypt, and he tells us all this. When they got to, we'll call it ancient Greece. Many people would argue with me that you can't really call them Greeks. You got to call them Proto-Greeks because we're talking about so long ago. This is before the Mycenaeans and all that stuff. But the Greeks were able to beat them back. So whatever was going on with pre-Bronze Age Greeks or with Proto-Greeks, whatever you want to call the people that were living where Greece is today, they were more advanced when it came to clunking each other on the head than the Atlanteans were, right?
That's the thing. Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
So that and he tells us all of this, and I think when you look at the evidence, it feels about right. That feels like the appropriate level of advanced technology, even though we're not talking nuclear submarines or spaceships or any of that stuff, like I said.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right, that's awesome.
Yeah. So the other thing, so let's talk about Stadia real quick, all right? Because we've got, and the other thing I want to do, we mentioned Randall Carlson, we mentioned the criticisms of this site. I want to get through those because I think they can all be addressed. But as Stadia, and Plato was writing, so people don't know this, but have you ever heard of Alexander the Great?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
I have.
Yep.
I have.
Good, yeah. Alexander the Great was born like 12 years before Plato died. So they didn't know each other, but but culturally, we're talking about the same society. And Plato was taught by this guy named Aristotle, who was one of Plato's, let's call him a disciple. He learned from Plato, although there was a bit of a falling out after Plato died, and Aristotle wanted to take over the academy because Plato created the first university, but he didn't get the job, so he pouted off and left and wound up teaching Alexander. But anyway, there's this thing called the Alexandrian measure of a stadia, and it's 600. In today's words, it's 607 feet. And Plato tells us that that's the unit of measure that they use. So when we go and we look on Google Earth, or we do any analysis, we have to say, well, how many? What did Plato tell us? Multiply that number by 607 feet, and then translate it into something that our Western minds can understand, like miles or whatever. So one of the things Plato says, he says that the city sat on an oblong-shaped plain with mountains on one side and a gentle slope of 3,000 stadia to the sea. Okay, that's what he said. So all these things where you see these little islands supposed to be lands and stuff, none of them can fit that, because 3,000 stadia, if you multiply that by 607 feet, that's 345 miles. I mean, that's really far. I mean, so Florida can't be it. Yeah, I mean, because Florida's not 300. That's where I live. Florida, it's not 345 miles across. But when you measure the African coast, and then you follow where the river would have been, and you go straight to where this Rishat structure thing is, guess how many miles it is from the sea? I just told you, 345. Oh. It matches what he said. Plato tells us that there was a canal dug from the outer ring to an inner harbor that was 50 stadia. Well, how far is 50 stadia? It's like 5.8 miles. Well, how far is it from the outer ring of this Rishat structure thing, or Eye of the Sahara is the other term, to the inner surface? It's 5.8 miles. Yeah, miles. Yeah. He tells us that the rings, they had to dig parts of them out, so that there's alternating pieces of the ring, because they got to get boats through, but people still got to be able to walk around it, right? And he tells us on the outer ring, when they dug those out and built the bridges, it was 3 stadia, that's 1,800 feet. On the middle ring, it was 2 stadia, that's 1,200 feet. And then for the harbor, it was 1 stadia, 600 feet. When you look at this Rishat structure thing, and you look to the south where the river entrance would have been, there's a hole cut out that's 1,800 feet, 3 stadia. And then offset to it, so not straight like people think, but offset a little bit, is another hole dug with a channel that's 1,200 feet, and so on. And you can kind of see in the bedrock that there was a channel dug between them. He tells us that there were mountains to the north and it was open to the south. Well, the Rishat structure has mountains to the north and it's open to the south. And it just goes on and on and on like this. And in the book, what I say is we can't dismiss anything, we can't tweak anything, and it's got to match exactly, and it all does, when you don't dismiss things that have been commonly dismissed because it doesn't fit any other place on the planet. So it's wildly fascinating.
Matt comes back with another comment, not a question. He says some of the theories are that Atlanteans expanded all over the world, and that is why you see similar pyramid structures all over the world. And Matt comes back with the Richard structure is probably one of the coolest, in my opinion, as the place where the city of Atlantis was.
Yeah, well, Plato, and Matt's right. Matt's the best chat person you could ever have for a show like this. So Plato tells us there's this. Is that Matt?
Matt cosplays as Deathstroke, just so you know.
But Plato tells us there's a city of Atlantis. He tells us there's a continent of Atlantis, which we can get into because he gives us some measurements for that. Then he tells us there's the kingdom of Atlantis. And he tells us Atlantis has a city that's ruled by a king named Atlas. And of course, right north of this Rishat structure thing are the Atlas Mountains. So we know we're in place there. Then he tells us it had 9 provinces. And he gives us the names of the rulers or the princes of all those provinces. And I'm in my second book, you can phonetically line a lot of those up. For example, the eldest of there were 5 sets of twins. I don't know why that was important, but all these provinces are ruled by 5 sets of twins. Atlas was the firstborn of the first set of twins. So he's the oldest. That's why he ruled the capital city. And Plato tells us the eldest of the 5th set of twins, for example, is the prince of the province of the Azores, or diving islands, as he calls them. Which goes into the competing theory with this. And Plato tells us, well, it wasn't the Azores because he tells us that was a province. So all these places, and Spain was a province, and the linguistics kind of match up. Egypt was a province, some of the islands there, and he gives us all of this. So it's not where the capital is, but it's absolutely part of the kingdom of Atlantis, which is why we find a level of megalithic construction around the world that seems to suggest something more was going on everywhere. And they're definitely seafaring, and there's other clues about the seafaring part we can talk about too if we get into it.
Okay. Now, before we go on, well, I just lost a train of thought because someone just reminded me to do something really, really quick. We do have to do the charities really, really quick. We do have this piece of artwork that is for the Zombie Leaders. What is the Zombie Leaders charity, Em?
I believe it's the lymphoma leukemia. I can't say it. Leukemia Society.
Neither can I. That's why I want you to do it.
Lymphoma Leukemia Society.
Yes. Now you can get this. This is done by Paulie G. This is a hand-painted Mandalorian Boba Fett painting.
Boba Fett himself.
Yeah, Boba Fett himself. This is by Paulie G. You can bid on this on eBay, or you can go to the Zombie Leaders Facebook page and bid on this painting. All proceeds go to the Zombie Leaders charity. And for Bacon Fest, please head on over and bid on this original piece of artwork for Team Christopher and Autism Speaks. Please go on over there. Now, we're only doing this. It's $10 a ticket. We're only selling 150 tickets right here. Jabo McNeil, Ty McNeil, they are heading this up. This is drawn by Jim Lawson, one of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle artists. Not only are you going to get that piece that you see here, but like we told you guys last week and the week before, he didn't like what he was doing. So he flipped it over and then started doing something else. So not only are you going to get this, but you're going to get another sketch on the other side. So please, if you want this sketch, go on over, donate, buy a raffle ticket, and get this. And once again, please head on over to the Sue Soares GoFundMe. Sue Soares is one of the nicest ladies that you can ever meet. She works for Alternate Reality Entertainment. She's going through a bad time right now. Please head on over to her GoFundMe for her medical bills. Please go there and donate if you can. And make sure you tell them that the Angrygeeks sent you. So now that we got that out of the way, it is now time for our second sponsor of the night. And then we'll be right back with more from Dave.
BST presents Mega Clash, August 20th from the Rafola Center in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Watch newly crowned Monarch champion Evie De La Rosa defend her title against Vita Von Star. A rivalry reignited in the main event. Lucas Chase challenges Dustin Waller in a ladder match for the BST Championship. It all comes to a head one final time.
And we're back with Dave Edwards. Sorry, Dave. It's another loud commercial. I know.
You know what? Loud is effective.
We are loud and we are angry here. Em, do you have another? And proud. Yeah, we are proud. Do you have another question for Dave?
I mean, if you could really compare the size to like, this is going to be, again, I just feel like these questions are so stupid because they're so different from yours, Lou. Would you say Atlantis is like bigger than, to compare it to a country like Canada or, you know, Russia or something like that?
Okay, so Plato tells us this is one of the things that he answers. He tells us that, so we've got the city, which we've talked about, and we have the dimensions of the city. I mentioned there was the 50 Stadia Canal, which is the radius of it.
Yeah.
So then he tells us that the continent of Atlantis is bigger than Libya and Asia combined.
Okay.
Now, when the ancient Greeks talked about Asia, they were talking about Turkey, because that's all of Asia that they knew. So when you take the square miles of Libya, and it's not exactly what we see on the map today, but it's close enough. If you do this, if you add the square miles of Libya and Turkey together, you get just under like 998,000 square miles, so up to 1 million square miles. And he says that it was separated by great distance and by mountains on one side, and then the other side was in the water. So when you look at this west coast of Africa, when you add up and the place it's in is called Mauritania, which to me just sounds kind of Atlantean. It's like a cool name of a country, right? Mauritania is kind of cool. But when you add up this 2,000 stadia by 3,000 stadia plane I was talking about, and all the countries that he's talking about, they come to about 2 million square miles, which is bigger than 1 million square miles. So in other words, the place this sits, and this is one of the problems with many of the other theories, like the Bimini Road. So maybe Florida or whatever. Well, Florida's not bigger than Libya and Turkey. You look at Spain. Spain's not bigger than Libya and Turkey. You look at the Azore Islands. I mean, they're not bigger than you know what I mean? So you need a very substantial landmass, which is why in the lore, the stupidity, the beating it to death, everyone draws a magical continent in the middle of the ocean that doesn't exist, and they say, well, it must be there. But if you ever look at it, if you look at it really, really close, it actually looks like Africa, like a reversed Africa. When they draw it, it's just the craziest subconscious thing. But one of the things I said when I did this research, I said, look, Plato, one source, that's really not, you never want just one source. So I said, we got to find two other sources that can corroborate what Plato said. Even though Plato is what we call the primary source. So there was another Greek historian who wrote something called the Histories. His name was Herodotus. And he wrote a travel log. And he actually talks about a community of people in Libya near the Atlas Mountains that call themselves Atlanteans. Now, he spells it a little different. And he's talking about 500 BC, not 9600 BC. So it's 9,000 years later. But there's a remnant of a society of people that call themselves Atlanteans that he documents. And these people are really weird people. They live on top of pillars of salt. They're vegetarians. They're really good at agriculture. They won't eat anything that's alive. They will tell you their name, but they won't let you write it down. They refuse to write down their history, and they spend their days cursing the sun. Kooky people.
And the Atlanteans, they salty.
Yeah, they're salty. And look, if your society got wiped out when all this happened, if the planet wobbled or whatever, we can talk about that. It would look like the sun was doing crazy things. So you can blame the sun, right, for the disaster. So it corroborates what Plato said. By itself, it's meaningless. The other piece of corroboration we have is a map called the Perireas Map. And this was put together in the 1500s by an Ottoman navigator named Perireas. And what they did is they went back to all the old maps they could find, ancient, old maps, and they put them all together into one map. And it's a very famous map. You can just search on it and you'll see copies of it. Everyone's been staring at this thing forever. In 1995, Graham Hancock opened his book, Fingerprints of the Gods, talking about this map, because what it seems to show is more about North and South America than could have been known, because it was theoretically only discovered a few years before the map was drawn. And it seems to show Antarctica without ice, but with the water very low. So the water is below what they call the continental shelf, which is where the land dips way down. And it seems to show that along the bottom. So the left side of the map and the bottom have always been of great focus. However, it's been hiding in plain sight. If you look at the Africa, and then you look where this Eye of the Sahara thing is in the Western Sahara Desert, there's a kooky little city surrounded by a kooky little ring of water, sitting exactly where this eye thing is, with a river leading up to it that's blocked by a bunch of mud. I mean, it couldn't be more spot on in verifying or providing more corroboration that this is the right place.
All right. Donald has a question that you kind of answered earlier. When you find Atlantis, what will be the one thing you hope to find, excluding Atlantis itself?
Yeah, I don't really have an answer. It's like a Christmas present. I can't wait to find out what's in it, and then after you open it, it's like, okay, that's great, that's what it was. I'm not really projecting anything into this. I do think. Let me answer a slightly different question. I think Atlantis is important, because if we could accept this as part of our history, then we're going to know a couple things that seem to be coming to a head. The first is that sometimes really bad things happen and societies get wiped out, tsunamis. The planet sits at like 23 degrees. It wobbles. Mm-hmm. Well, it's been around for 4.5 billion years. Why it shouldn't wobble unless something bad happened that caused it to wobble. So I think Atlantis provides us a marker in time that we can start to use to put together all the other stuff we found, all the stuff we found in Peru and Mexico and China and Mu and all these other civilizations and all that. I think it establishes that time period in a concrete way, and that more than doubles human history, which I think is very important.
Okay, Matt comes in with another question or comment. Matt says, myths and legends have basis and truths, but you have to peel the story elements to get to the truths.
Yeah, well, that's what I did in the book, which is, and I said, in normal academia, you would do a literature review, and the problem with Atlantis is it's near impossible to separate the chaff from the whey. Is that still a saying? The good from the bad, right? It's hard to separate the baby from the bathwater. And even Randall Carlson, who everyone loves, they love this guy, and he's very charismatic, but he's got some really kooky theories that probably aren't anywhere close to reality. So if he's willing to do that, how do you separate the good from the bad? So what I've done to that point is I've said I won't speculate. I speculate twice in the book, but I make a huge big deal about telling I'm speculating. I make it bold. It's very clear I'm speculating. Otherwise, I just think we have to literally look at this. I mean, we're modern people. We have modern methodologies. We have a modern scientific approach. I think we have to use that and push all that other stuff aside, because honestly, it's all made up. It's mostly nonsense when it comes to Atlantis, outside of the core things we can learn from Plato.
Question of the week. Are we ready for question of the week? Question of the week this week is brought to you by Alternate Universe LLC in Milford in New Haven. This week's question of the week: what fictional character would you not invite over for dinner? What fictional character would you not invite over for dinner? Once again, question of the week is brought to you by Alternate Universe LLC, Milford and New Haven, Connecticut. Dave, you go first. What fictional character would you not invite over for dinner?
The first name that jumped into my head was Pepe Le Pew.
Okay. And why? Why is that? Besides,
I think the name is. I think that answer stands on its own.
Okay.
Louis, I think that's enough.
Okay. Quinderella.
Well, I'm going to say this because it's one of my favorite shows, and I was just watching it. I love the show Friends. Love it. Could never invite what's Courtney Cox. Monica. She's too perfectionist. That's way too much pressure for me. I can't do it. I can't cook in the first place, let alone for Monica Geller. I just can't take that pressure. Can't take that criticism.
Okay. All right. Donald comes in, one of our audience, someone from the audience. Donald says The Thing. He would destroy all the furniture.
So we just don't want to be friends with him at all.
No, we don't want to be no, actually, our producers from Pod TV got mad at me last week because they said I dodged the question on best pickup line. So I guess I have to actually answer the question this week. So what fictional character do I not want to have over for dinner? I would say the Beast, Dr. Hank McCoy from the X-Men, because I cannot handle my dog shedding everywhere. Just imagine eating dinner and having blue fur just fly all over your salad, your burgers, or see, Em, you know what I'm talking about. Just imagine that. That would just be disgusting.
Quite.
Yeah,
yes.
It would have to be the Beast. The Beast from the X-Men, Dr. Hank McCoy. No.
Yeah, not Beauty and the Beast. We mean it's that one. Okay.
Yeah, the ever-loving Beast. Yeah, my stars and garters. No way.
I accept your answer.
Thank you. Yes, by all means. Oh, my God. So, Dave, the book has been out since April 2022.
Yep.
The top best-selling book of its kind on in its subject matter on Amazon, on Prime, and on not on Prime, excuse me, on Kindle and through Amazon Prime. Am I correct?
You are not only correct, but I have a screenshot of the 2 weeks I was ahead of Graham Hancock's new book in the same category, which will be plastered on the inside of my coffin when I die. So it's doing
careful
okay.
In Atlantis. Could happen.
Is the book self-published?
The book is, we'll call it self-published. I go through a publisher, but
Okay.
I own the publishing company, so it's kind of self-published.
Okay, and Matt says it's out of print on Amazon. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Not good for us, but good for you.
No, yeah,
well,
not.
you can always get the Kindle version. That's not out
That's
of print.
true.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why it would be. Yeah, no, like it's sold really good. So that must be the paperback version. But yeah, no, the
Okay,
Kindle
so
you can buy. They don't run out of those.
that was my next question. Now, a lot of times when we have an author on the show, we always ask if someone buys the book on Amazon and we are comic book nerds. We go to comic book conventions, alternate reality entertainment, all of them, and they want to have something signed. Can they forward that book to you and have you personalize it or sign it? Is that an option?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
And
going to
how
give my
would
home address, but we'll
No,
figure
no,
something out.
not at all. Not at all. I'm saying, how would they reach out to you, and how would they post office box,
Yeah, no,
publisher?
look, go to
Okay.
frequency99.com. There's contact forms there. There's an email form there. I think there's even a phone number there. It's a real publishing company. I've got 2 other people's books who I publish, including my own. But since I've written, as I mentioned, 42, so I'm kind of my own best content producer when it comes to books. But yeah, for the out of print thing, there were a couple early versions that I changed, so I'm not sure it's really out of print. You just might have found one of the ones that. Because I did 2 updates on there. I did an update to address what some of the criticisms were. So it might be, you might have found the old, the original 1.0 version, and there's a newer version out there.
Okay, we do have 4 minutes left before we start pimping you and where to go to find you on social media. Do you want to talk about those criticisms really
Let's talk
quick?
about them. I like that. Yeah, I'm not trying to hide behind this thing. So when you look at Randall Carlson and others, and there's a lot of people that I'm going to hide behind the biceps.
Yeah. One of my other co-hosts, Mark May.
So. Yeah, so it's basically there's 5 things that people say are wrong with this site, how it doesn't fit what Plato said. The first is they say the elevation is too high. And what they mean by that is it's like 3,000 or 4,000 feet above sea level. And they say seawater doesn't flow uphill. And then I point things out like, I agree with you that it doesn't, but if you remember from 2nd grade how weather works and every other river on the planet that's ever existed, look at the Mississippi. That's not seawater flowing up the Mississippi. It's all the rain and the drainage water, the precipitation they call it, draining from the land into the water. So the slope of this thing is like 0.07 or 0.007%. It's a really gentle slope, and it completely supports rain flowing around this thing and creating a river and flowing to the sea. So the too high criticism doesn't really work.
Okay.
He says it was naturally formed. It's another criticism of this. They say it's a volcanic dome, which I think it is. Plato tells us that Poseidon made it with volcanoes. So unless we're saying Poseidon was the guy going around digging holes, that's not really a criticism, right? So it fits that. A big thing that Randall Carlson says, and he leans on this a lot, he says the Atlantean power that attacked Greece came from the sea. That's a line out of Plato. The challenge is if you come down the river and you go up the coast of Africa through what they call the Strait of Gibraltar, either from this location or from the Azores, which is where he thinks it is, all that comes from the sea. Everything outside the Strait of Gibraltar is from the sea. So that's not a real criticism. They say that it was the way to the opposite continent as a criticism, under the theory that you'd come out of the Strait of Gibraltar and you'd go straight, which is the longest distance between Europe and North America, because they think the opposite continent is North America. But no one of this time would ever, that's not how you sail. It's just not, you go back and you can look at Bronze Age Greeks or even later Classic Age Greeks or anyone with boats before, in BCE and stuff. And if they could sail and not lose sight of the coast, that's just how they did it. That's just what you do. So you wouldn't go straight. You would take the currents down the coast of Africa. So it is the way to the opposite continent, because the other thing is, if you look, the places where the continents are closest is from the tip of Africa to the tip of South America. And the currents actually support that. So that's how you would go there. So that fits. And the last criticism is they say the site's too big. They say the rings don't fit the description. And because what they do, because they're not engineers, is Plato says that the breadth of those bridges I told you about that were cut into the rings, remember I said the breadth was 3 stadia and 2 stadia? Well, that's, so if you've got a circle, you're talking about the breadth. they turn it like that, and they say, well, that's how wide it was across. And then when you take, okay, well, 1,800 feet, 1,200 feet, well, it's not as big, it's not 5 miles like this thing. Well, that's a completely incorrect reading of the literature. So it's just ignorant, honestly, to say that it's too big. And those are all the criticisms. Everything else matches perfectly, and none of those criticisms hold water, and 4 out of 5 are actually more proof that this is the right place versus a detriment to it. So.
All right. Once again, why don't you tell our audience where they can reach out if they have any further questions or just want to stop in and say hi? Where can they find you?
Frequency99.com is the website, and it's got all the contact information up there, links to the books. The book's available on Amazon. It's called Atlantis Solved, The Final Definitive Proof. And if you ever wanted to know where Atlantis is, read the book.
All right. Em, where can people find you and your beautiful cosplay and know that you're an actor?
Okay. So you can find me. I'm trying to post about every day, every other day on my Instagram. It's Quinderella Cosplay. And you can also find me on my website, quinderellacosplay.com. And you can check out my Facebook, Emily Mae Partington, okay, Quinderella. And I try to post whenever I'm doing shows, pretty much on all of my pages. So, yeah.
And you can find her almost every Monday night now, right here with me on the Angry Geek Show. You can find me every Tuesday night with Inksling and Jack Purcell on the Faces of Heels podcast, every Friday night with Mark May on the Mayhem Show. You can find the Angry Geeks at all alternate reality entertainment because we are exclusive with them bad boys and gals. And you can find us on Pod TV, and we're going to show you guys how to do that pretty soon. So we'll see you guys all next week. Stay safe, Atlantis. We'll see you guys next week with a brand new guest, brand new question of the week, and all that stuff. See ya. You have been watching the Angry Geek Show on Pod TV. Visit our website today, and for guest bookings, email us at theangrygeekshow@gmail.com today.